Hello, and thank you for joining us for the next episode of It's Your Time to Shine, a podcast about being a mom in a modern world. My name is Jaspreet Kaur, and I'm excited to continue my conversation with Rina Sekon. She's the founder of a fantastic spice company called At Home with Rina. Last time we talked about how Rina left her career as a rising star at a tech company to start a family, and we heard about her personal experience with IVF and the pain of struggling with infertility. First off, I have to say, talking to Rina really helped me be more honest about my own experience with pregnancy and loss, and I'm excited to share more of our conversation. It has very much become a norm, right? Going through IVF, whether it's medication or shots or actual like full-blown IVF. I know I'm not using clinically correct terms, but like actually doing the transplant and things like that, it's become very normal. I have so many friends who tell me that they have had assistance, they've had help, and many of them have twins. One of our friends has triplets, and it's become normal. And I think that there must be something to that too, right? There must be something to the fact that it's become more difficult for so many people. It's not an anomaly anymore. And there's an aspect of women being judged by IVF. The conversation hardly ever has anything to do with the man, because what they have to give, they give outside of their body. And what we have to give, we can only give from within our body, deep within our bodies. And that's something that's troubling to me, as we have this conversation. And as I am being more deliberate about dialogue and allowing conversation to be the goal rather than getting to an outcome, I am taken aback by how much pressure women put on themselves and allow to be put onto themselves. Have you felt that as you've been talking through? And talk a little bit more about, like, if you've experienced that and then the healing that you've come about. How can more women experience that?
I just feel like any woman who has to experience that type of a loss, it's very common what you're experiencing, where people are like, I feel like I should have another child. Like I was meant to have 4 kids, or I was, because you have that lost pregnancy, right? So like when I was pregnant with triplets, I often wonder, I'm like, oh, my kids would have been, we'd be in preschool right now, or, we would have done this with them, so there is always that, like, you've got this like fake timeline of things that are supposed to be happening.
Right.
And a lot of women experience that, and it doesn't go away. And I know there are some women that, as a result of that, have decided, like, they knew that they were pregnant with like a boy, or they knew that they were pregnant with a girl, and they've gone through IVF for the purpose of gender selecting to redo that pregnancy. And whether it brings them healing or closure, I don't know, but everybody is entitled to do what gives them comfort.
Sure. Yeah.
The question about how did I get healed?
Yeah, like, is there have you experienced other women having this pressure put upon them, and then it feels like you have this sense of healing about you? Can you say a little bit about how, like, that's come about for you?
Yeah. So a lot of women, because I'm so vocal on Instagram and just like in my regular life about what's going on with me, and I'm very candid, and I also use humor as a vehicle to convey whatever my situation is, because it's an easy medium for people to digest that information in a capacity where humor is the vehicle that's driving that information, right? Like, if you just start off and you're like, oh my God, I just had a people just are turned off and they don't want to engage. And for me, I want more people to engage, because I want more people to have awareness. The more people that are aware, the more change we can affect, be it through policy or awareness, or, just having some civil discourse around, like, our reproductive rights. And a lot of people have come forward, and it's a couple of options. Hey, I did IVF, like, I got pregnant. I know you can do it. Like, I have faith in this process, but I don't want anybody to know that I conceived my child via IVF, which I don't understand, because you have this kid.
And it's your parts.
Yeah, and you, like, it worked. Like, you should be, like, super grateful for science and technology, and, like, you should be spreading the word. And then there are people that are going through it, and they're like, I don't want people to know that we did IVF because my husband had a low sperm count, and he's worried that kids are going to make fun of our kid for being a test tube baby when he goes to kindergarten. And these are all, like, really weird things that I don't understand.
Is that a thing? Do kids call people test tube babies?
It's not. The kids don't do that. But the parents are, like, creating this fake environment of, you know, where, like...
Our insecurities we're, like, projecting now on pre-K kids, like, as if they've done something to harm us.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And then you have these other people... women that come forward and they're like, hey, it's so expensive. Like, how are you doing this? Like, what are some money saving tips that you're doing? Because it is expensive. It's $25,000 a cycle. And there's only 15 states that have a mandate that insurance companies have to cover IVF. Okay. And in California, we don't have that mandate. Okay. And so insurance companies can basically discriminate against women that are, or families that are trying to create a family. You know, trying to create children. And they call it an elective procedure. Like, it's in the same category as Botox, breast augmentation, and braces, which I think is absurd, because if we're talking about women's reproductive rights, and we're talking about the full spectrum of women's reproductive rights, and we're talking about our right to not have, and our right to prevent, and our right to screen, then we should also be protecting our right to choice, which is to have. And by not allowing for, and by allowing insurance companies to selectively discriminate against women for infertility, you're basically penalizing a portion of women's reproductive full rights.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, so there are those women that come out, and then there are women that are just, like, sad, that are just struggling, and the husbands too. My husband is... he tells me all the time, he's like, it's totally fine and socially accepted for you to go out and tell people you're sad about not being pregnant. And you can cry about it, and you can laugh about it, and you can be frustrated about it. He's like, but I don't have that same outlet because my male community does not receive me. Oh. And he's like, I don't have a community to go to and say, like, I'm really sad that our embryo transfer resulted in a negative pregnancy. He's like, you're my only person I can talk to, or my therapist. And he's like, but I can't really call my friends or my guy friends, or even go to, like, a blog site or anything where it's just men talking about what it feels like to not be pregnant and to have this longing for this child. And he's like, because it's so accepted to women to be empowered and be confident and be outspoken, and then also be emotional and vulnerable. But he's like, men don't have that same range of vulnerability. Yes. And so he's like, I'm not socially accepted to be vulnerable and to be sad and to be emotional and be angry and to have grief. Like, I can only be confident, strong, outspoken, and, you know, the traditional. You just broke my heart. My heart. Like, that's something that I've never thought about, because we have these implicit biases, right, in our minds in terms of what we see. And I try to be a champion for, like, inclusiveness and equality. And that just took me totally by surprise. Yeah. I can feel for him. And so I think for us, how we've gotten healing as a couple is that we've gone to therapy and we've just worked on ourselves. Like, whatever our insecurities are. Like, you know how, like, all these people are like, oh, I don't want my kid to be a test tube baby. And like, those are our own insecurities. Right? So I have my own insecurities, and I'm very vocal about going to therapy and having a therapist and taking antidepressants, like, when it's necessary. You know, we don't give anybody any grief for taking cholesterol medication. We don't give anybody any grief for taking medication for diabetes, and which I think is worse, because that means you're not taking care of your body and like weight and exercise and food choices. Yeah. So I do all these things, and you know, and there's this stigma with, like, taking medication or getting a therapist, but these are all things that have helped me in finding my peace with our journey. And my husband.
Yeah.
Both of us.
Beautiful.
That's the real truth. I love my therapist. And if I ever win an Emmy for getting a Food Network show or something, I'm a big shout out to Leslie. I love her. She is the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great that you are willing to do that. I've never been to see a therapist, and the old Punjabi women voices in my head as I'm saying that out loud are like, knock on wood, good, that's good. You know, I hear like my Masi and my mom, and I hear like my grandmother saying like, oh, shukriya rabda, right? But these are the voices that I walk around with in my head, Rena. It's a real thing. But at the same time, there's that stigma, right, in our community in general and in American society that, you know, oh, why do you need a therapist? What is it that you can't handle? Even though we live in this like patriarchal, misogynistic society where like everything is made for the pale male, stale view.
Oh, that is so good.
And yet they're like, oh, well, what is it? Tell me, Jaspreet, what is it that you can't handle, you know? But I think that's wonderful. And one of the thoughts that I've had, you know, early on in life and marriage was, if I were to go talk to a therapist, would my husband go? And he probably, you know, maybe he would come around, like my husband's wonderful and he pretty much will come around on everything. But the initial reaction would be like, no, I don't want to talk to a therapist, most likely. And then also, would a therapist understand us? And so I love that you talk about that freely, because I like normalizing things. Like I like that it's okay.
Yeah.
My
therapist is amazing. I love her so much. And like I said, if I ever win any kind of Emmy, like, do you remember when Ron Artest Meta World Peace for the Lakers, when they won the NBA championship? He won it in the last seconds. He was supposed to take the ball and throw it to Kobe, but he made the shot, and it was nuts, right? Because it was just nuts. Like, first of all, why give the ball to Kobe?
Yeah.
You know, like you're 1 point.
Let's go with statistics on this one.
Give the ball to Kobe. Yeah. And he made the shot, and it was crazy, and they won the finals. And the reporter comes up to him and is like, Meta World Peace. Like, what were you thinking? He's like, I love my psychiatrist. And I was like, yes.
That's so funny.
Yes. I was like, that's me. I love my therapist. And like, yeah, I get it. Like, I pay her to be my friend. Mm-hmm. But she also like tells me the truth.
Right.
In a very kind way. Like, Rena, you're being really hard on yourself. Like, that is absurd. Or, Rena, you're being, you know, that's not real. Those are those voices that are not real, you know? And I need that, you know? Or she'll be like, yeah, you were a little mean and you should probably apologize, you know? And she's got no vested interest other than just like me being a better person.
Right. And you being healthy and a sound mind.
Yeah. And I can trust her, and I don't, you know, and I pay her. So it's like, it's a very transparent relationship. I know what I'm getting. I give her money. She tells me the truth.
Yeah.
And I leave feeling lighter. It's like the best thing in the world.
She's a truth broker.
She is a truth broker. Sigmund Freud, for women hysteria, the thing that he would prescribe was an orgasm. I would much rather see my therapist.
That's so funny.
Just talking about the patriarchy.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure in Sigmund Freud's day, that was something that only a man could give.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Okay. And we know that's not true.
Women are so amazing. Who else do you know can grow a body part that they do not have? Like, you grew a penis in your body.
That is a profound statement.
Tell me another person, a man that could do that. Like, what is the best thing that they got? That they can pee standing up? Great.
They can't even do that in a test tube, right? All the technology that they've had.
You know? I mean, I could do it too. It's just not as graceful. But I'm just saying, like, that's so amazing.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
You grew a body part you don't even have.
Yeah. It just goes to show you with directions, I can do anything.
Watch out, IKEA.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, well, I want to ask you one last question before we wrap up. And it has to do with the connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit, which is something I've really been exploring the last couple of weeks. And I did a talk about identity and like understanding who you are from those three components and being able to tell your story, because storytelling is something that's very near and dear to my heart. But I want to ask you, mind, body, and spirit, do you, as you're going through this journey, have you felt a connection? Do those three, like, does the trifecta of those three things mean anything to you? Or is there something that you can share as part of your journey of something that you're either working on or something profound that has happened to you?
I grew up in a very, traditional, like, Sikh family, going to the Gurdwara. And the only mantra that I have is that everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, I believed that, there's a God, mm-hmm. and that God is Waheguru. And then going through this whole process, I became very frustrated with God and religion. But then I also have now come full circle, and I'm like, we're like ants. I can't imagine that God, who is this loving, kind person, mm-hmm. is looking down and found me and is like, you will suffer. I can't imagine that God, who in theory is just love, mm-hmm. like that's all God is just this huge ball of love, has found me and said, you will suffer and you will feel pain. And, fighting that notion is a challenge on a daily basis. Sure. Because that's not real. Like, if God is love, that's not God, mm-hmm. wanting me to feel this way. And if I really believe that this IVF journey has like brought me so much healing and has made me such a better person, then I'm like, thank you, God, thank you for doing that for me. Mm-hmm. But like, also, like, could we maybe take a break? Can we maybe take a break and like maybe give me like a couple good years, and then we can maybe start up again? Yeah. So I'm just kind of having this like funny discourse with God right now where it's like, hey, like, that was awesome. Like, I'm stronger now, yeah. But like, I also need a minute. Yes. Just to wipe front and back.
Or like, just like a little tag team, like, yeah. Can I be out for 10 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. Can we let that guy over there, yeah. the orange one that's in the big White House? Yeah. Yeah. Can we give it to him for a few days?
That's wonderful.
So yeah. I'm still like in this process of just like trying to understand. And the only thing that I know is truth is that love and kindness is the only currency that counts.
Beautiful.
So that's it. I want to ask you a few questions, just like about your vagina.
Okay.
If you had a friend and she was an OBGYN, would you go and see her to do your exam?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Because she's a professional, and she sees vaginas all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So why not let her see your vagina?
And you want me to be honest probably, right, when I answer these?
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice. Okay. That would be ideal. Unless you want to channel your inner orange.
I would probably not go see a friend.
Okay, because I have a friend who's like my really good friend. She's an OBGYN. And I was thinking about that. I was like, would I want her to do my exam? But then I was like, then I would want to see hers, just so that like keep our friendship equal.
See, I wouldn't need that. My reason is like, I'm an Amritari Sikh. Yeah. So I don't remove hair from my body at all.
Me too.
And I'm like, I know that's not the norm anymore. I would be like sensitive about that. And I don't do it for spiritual faith practice reasons. Yeah. But also if I could do it, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. And so,
can we talk about that a little bit, about going to the exam? So we talk about like all these like emotional things. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's very difficult about this IVF stuff is everybody seeing your vagina. Mm-hmm. My whole life I have coveted the view of my vagina to like maybe the number, like one hand. Mm-hmm. And now when you go through IVF, your vagina is like literally just out there. There will be like 6 or 7 people during the embryo transfer with, you're just uncovered from the waist down. Yeah. And everybody can see your pelvic area, and mm-hmm. your feet are up in the stirrups, and there's a huge flashlight that shines right into your vagina, and your like stomach glows like a jack-o'-lantern, and it's very weird, and everybody's just going on and having a conversation, and it's just a very strange feeling of just that exposure. Right. And it has just become such a norm for me, you know, of just having like all these people staring at me. Yeah. And I remember like I'm doing all these experimental things that I read about, and I'm like, hey, can we try this? Can we do this? And the doctor at this clinic is like very supportive. And so as a result, he'll have like students come. And so you'll just have like this train of students that are coming. I don't know them. I don't see them. They've got like the little face masks on. So all you see is their eyes and their eyebrows.
Yeah. It's like a bank robbery.
It is a bank robbery of my vagina. And it's just like a very weird feeling that, you know, as women, like, you know, not only are you just like bearing your soul, but then you're also physically bearing this view that you covet.
Yeah.
And,
so I want to tell you that if it's good that you're used to that, because what I have had in my pregnancy journeys, childbirthing journeys, is a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean. Highly recommend it.
Wait, what is that?
So I had, for my first child, I had a cesarean, a C-section, because we had some complications when we were in labor. And then I wanted to, like, being the hippie mom that I am, I wanted to go like all natural for my second baby, you know? Yeah. And actually a terrible idea to like not get an epidural. I see that in hindsight. I was like, whose idea was it to go like completely natural?
Yeah.
But I had my son as a VBAC, which stands for a vaginal birth after a cesarean. And it can be high risk because your stitches can rupture, but it can be done. And I did it. And I did it without any medication or any anesthesia. I felt every single pain that there is to feel. But because of the risk to the baby erupting through your abdomen wall, as opposed to coming down from the uterus down the vagina, there was like 25 people in the room. There was like a neonatologist, there's nurses, there's multiple doctors. I mean, everybody's there to make sure that the stitches that I have from my previous C-section, everything goes right. And it's like bright lights. Yeah. It's the opposite of what you see on TV.
Yeah.
And, when you're in that situation, it's like, okay, there is no privacy anymore. Yeah. The idea, like where my mom would say, like, don't wear short skirts, because here we are and we're like giving it up for free now. Yeah. You know? And to add insult to injury, I had my beautiful son. He was 5 pounds, 11 ounces. I mean, could a soul have more like compassion for his mom? Like, he was so little. He was born at 41 weeks and 6 days. So like almost 42 weeks. Yeah. And he was tiny. Yeah. He was 5 pounds. And it's like, that was his gift to me. Like, I can't control anything else, Mama, but I will be small for you. Aww. And still the doctor had to go with forceps and a vacuum and like try to pull him out. And none of that's comfortable because it's like 12 people holding your legs up and doing all these other things. And all I remember is the inside of my eyelids, because I was like, I cannot look at this anymore. But, and I'll share something funny with you. It's that a nurse, you know, I asked my husband, like, what the hell is going on, you know? And I'm cursing at him because he has like culpability to this whole scenario, right? Yeah. And the nurse says, do you want a mirror? And I was like, no, I don't want any mirror. I don't even like looking down there. And all of you 24 people are all like, the show has started. Yeah. You know, there's a guy in the back eating popcorn. Like, let me know when when I'm up. And
which is so true, because they're just on their lunch break.
Yeah. They're just in there like, oh, let's pop in and see how Miss Core is doing.
Yeah, like, is it my turn?
Yeah. And so so it's good that the IVF journey is getting you ready for that. I think like, I don't know if they're mindfully made that decision, but I think that's wonderful.
I just, no, and I'm just like, also like, I just, you know, you're like, oh my God, my vagina is so small. Like, oh, it's going to hurt, right? And like the amount of things that they have shoved up my vagina, I am just so amazed at how it snaps back.
Yes.
I'm like, you know, all these euphemisms that we have about like grab them by the balls, tough as balls. My vagina
is super
strong. It snaps back. Yes. Like, and then goes and makes dinner. Yes. You know, you get kicked in the balls and try to make a pot of tea.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question before we wrap up. Have you been watching Handmaid's Tale? I think that we've had this discussion. I believe you have been?
Yes.
Okay. After having this discussion about IVF and going through this process and me sharing, like having a delivery with all those people, Do you think it's actually like a very small act of kindness that whenever they go in, the handmaids go in to see the OBGYN, it's all behind a curtain and they have no idea who's looking at their junk?
Do you think it's an act of kindness?
Yeah.
No, I think it's a way to like continue the shame. Because like, you know how your mom said like, oh, don't wear a skirt, or, because it just like further embodies like the shame of your vagina, the shame of you. You know?
You don't even know who's looking at you, who's down there.
Yeah, like you don't even get that courtesy. You don't even get, like, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's shame. I feel like when they put a curtain up, right, and there's no blood and there's no there's no like, not like a C-section. Like I understand, like your whole basically your insides are out on the table, right? But when they do that, I feel like it creates this like disconnection from your body, and it's like you're not even here. Like you don't even count. Like you are not even relevant.
Yes. Okay,
like we just need this little 5-pound thing that's in your stomach, this uterus. And it just creates this like this separation of the person from the body. And and they use the word, you are unwoman. So it's just another way to make them feel like a less of a human.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I think in everything that they do in to the handmaid is to continue to isolate them and make them feel less than, right? They have no job. Like they can't go to the grocery store, they can't cook, they can't plant, they don't have hobbies. Yeah. Like they don't have
It's isolation.
It's super isolation. So this whole like the curtain and the just
furthering that.
Continuing the isolation.
Very, very cool.
Because when you isolate somebody, what do you do to them?
Yeah. Well, to bring it back to Sikhi, which is the basis on which you and I met one another, the connection is the goal of life, right? Yeah. So you break that connection, you really are destroying someone's life. I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with me.
I love you.
I love you too. And you are such an amazing woman, starting with your political views and your willingness to really be out there. And I'm not going to say ending with, but going all the way to your love of food, your willingness to share, and the IVF journey, which has brought healing to so many people, not just me and not just my children, but so many people, because it opens the door to dialogue that sometimes we need an invitation to talk about things because we don't have the courage to talk about them ourselves. So I know you probably hear it a lot, but I want to express my gratitude to you. And I really feel grateful for you to take the time to come out and talk to me and share more. So continue sharing, continue giving voice to other women and giving courage to other women. And I hope to hear more. Whether you have a baby that's yours or has 4 paws or whatever the future holds for you, I want you to know that my family is constantly rooting for you and you have all of our love. Yeah. And with that, I'll thank our listeners for listening in. And although we miss Lisa, you'll hear the two of us together again next time. So thanks for listening to It's Your Time to Shine.